The morning I found the envelope, I wasn't looking for anything. That's the part that gets me every time I think about it. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't worried. I was pulling his old work jacket off the hook by the back door because mine was in the wash and I needed something to wear out to the car. February cold, quick errand, I just grabbed what was closest. The envelope was folded twice and stuffed into the inner pocket. Not hidden exactly, but not meant to be found either. Plain white, the kind you buy in a box of 50 at the dollar store, no name on the front. I almost shoved it back in without looking. Almost. Inside was a receipt. Gas station, 2 towns over, dated 3 Saturdays ago. The same Saturday Marcus told me he was helping Pete fix a busted water heater on the other side of the county. Pete lives in the opposite direction. I stood at the back door in my socks on the cold linoleum, holding that little slip of paper, and for about 30 seconds my brain refused to do anything with it. Then it did everything with it. All at once. Marcus and I had been married 4 years. We met the way most quiet things happen, slowly, and without much ceremony. He was the kind of man who showed up when he said he would, fixed what he said he'd fix, meant what he said. That was the version of him I knew. Steady. Reliable. The kind of man you build a life with because every brick he set was solid. But I had noticed things. Small things. Phone calls he took in the driveway. A number in his recent calls listed only as a letter, just a single D, that I'd seen twice now when his screen was up while he was washing his hands. A Saturday here, a Sunday there, where his explanation was fine, but something underneath it felt a little practiced. I had told myself it was nothing. I had told myself that because I wanted it to be nothing. I put the receipt back in the pocket. I hung the jacket back on the hook. I got my own coat from the laundry basket where it was still damp, and I went and did my errand in the cold without saying a word to anyone. That was a Thursday. By Sunday, I had found 2 more things. The first was a card in the glove box of the truck. A birthday card, already written in, sealed, addressed in Marcus's handwriting. I only saw it because he asked me to grab the insurance papers when we got pulled over for a busted taillight, and the card slid out from under the folder. The name on the front was Rose. I handed him the insurance without looking at the card again, but the name sat in my chest for the rest of the drive home. The second was a bank statement. Not hidden, just mixed in with the farm bills I was sorting on the kitchen table while he was out checking cattle. A monthly transfer I'd never seen on our shared account breakdown. Same amount every time. Same date. Going to an account I didn't recognize. Not enormous, but not nothing. Enough to mean something to someone. I put the statement back at the bottom of the pile. That night, I made dinner, and Marcus came in from the barn smelling like cold air and hay. He washed his hands at the sink, told me the heifer in the south pasture looked like she'd calve early, and sat down at the table like every other night. He thanked me for the food. He asked about my mother's appointment. He poured us both water and drank his before he ate the way he always did. I watched him across that table and tried to see something wrong in his face. I didn't see anything. That was almost worse. After dinner, he fell asleep in the chair with the farming magazine across his chest the way he did 2 or 3 nights a week. I sat at the table with my hands around a cold mug and thought about what kind of person I was going to be about this. I had 2 choices. I could keep quiet and keep watching, which was already making me feel hollow. Or I could ask him directly, which terrified me in a way I didn't fully want to look at. Because asking directly meant he might answer. And some answers you can't put back. I chose the third thing, which was neither. I called my sister. Donna picked up on the second ring, because she always did. I told her what I'd found. The receipt. The card. The transfers. The name Rose. I laid it all out as flat and unemotional as I could manage, the way you say things when you're trying to sound like you have not already spent 3 days running them in circles in your own head. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "That's a lot of smoke." "I know. You think he's seeing someone?" "I don't want to think anything yet. But you do think something." "Yes, I do." Donna said, "You have to ask him." "I know. Not tomorrow. Tonight." I stared at the ceiling. "He's asleep. Wake him up." I didn't wake him up that night. I watched him sleep in the chair for a while, which was its own strange thing to do. He had his hands folded on top of the magazine, and his face was so open when he slept. No guard up, no careful look. Just Marcus, my husband. The man who fixed the fence post the day after we moved in without being asked, who taught himself to make my grandmother's potato soup from memory after she passed, who held my hand in the dark during the bad summer 3 years ago when I was so low I couldn't see out. That was the version of him I had built my whole life against. I went to bed without saying anything. The next morning I almost let it go again. He got up early, same as always. I heard him in the kitchen. Heard the door, the truck, the sound of feeding time. By the time I came downstairs, coffee was made, and there was a note on the counter. Back by 10. Hinges on the barn door need replacing. I poured the coffee and stood there. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Marcus's number. But it wasn't from Marcus. It said, he's going to be having a hard week. Thank you for understanding. It came from a contact he must have accidentally sent to my number instead of his own, which meant he had my number and this other person's number close together in a way that made my stomach drop. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, then stopped, then appeared again, then nothing. I called Marcus. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, everything okay? I need you to come home." He didn't ask why. That was the thing. He just said 15 minutes. He was back in 12. I was sitting at the kitchen table when his boots hit the porch. He came in, read my face in the way he always could, and went very still near the door. What happened? I set my phone on the table face up with the message showing. He looked at it. He looked at me. Something moved through his face that I didn't have a name for yet. Not guilt exactly. Not the expression I had been dreading, not caught out, not defensive. Something closer to tired and sad, and a little bit afraid. He pulled the chair out across from me and sat down. I did not say anything. I waited. For a long moment, he looked at his hands on the table. Then he looked up at me. "There's something I should have told you," he said. "A long time ago. I didn't. And I don't have a good reason for that except I was afraid." I kept my hands flat on my side of the table. "Okay." He didn't look away. "My father is alive." The kitchen went very quiet. I had known Marcus for 6 years. We had been married for 4 of them. I had heard the story once, early on, when we were still in the careful, honest stage of falling in love. His father left when Marcus was 11, packed a bag, drove away, didn't come back. His mother raised him and his younger brother alone on not enough money and more pride than most. His father had been gone so long, Marcus told me, that at some point the man just stopped being part of the story. He never told me the man was dead. Not in those words. But the way he spoke about it, the closed door in his voice whenever anyone came near the subject, the finality of it, I had understood it as loss. As over. Marcus pressed both hands flat to the table. He lives in a care facility in Hadley. Has for 3 years now. Dementia. I got a call from a social worker when his situation got bad. There was no one else. I stared at him. "I know how it sounds," he said. "I don't know what it sounds like yet," I said. He nodded. That was fair. He went slowly. The way you go through something you've turned over so many times in private that the words have worn smooth. His father had not been some ghost. The man had surfaced once when Marcus was in his 20s, a phone call, an apology that didn't sound like one, a request for money that Marcus had refused. Then silence for another decade. Then the social worker. The facility in Hadley needed a family contact. There was no one else. Marcus's mother had passed by then. His brother refused to have anything to do with it. So Marcus went. Once, he said. Just to assess. Just to make sure the man wasn't being mistreated or forgotten completely. And then he kept going. I didn't plan to, he said. I went, and I sat across from this old man who barely knew where he was anymore, and I thought I was going to feel nothing. He looked at me and called me by my brother's name. And I still didn't feel nothing. He stopped talking for a second. The transfers, I said quietly. He nodded. The facility is decent, but they charge extra for certain things. Better meals. The seat by the window. Small things. The card. The card is from a woman named Rose who works there. She sends updates sometimes. A birthday once. She wrote because she thought I was a good son, coming all the way out there every few weeks without fail. He said it without any pride in it. Just flat. So I asked, why didn't you tell me? He looked at the table. Because when I told you about him leaving, he said, you said that's not something you come back from. I heard that. And I believed you meant it. I thought if I told you I was choosing to go back to sit with him, to pay for his window seat, you would think I was weak. Or foolish. Or that I had let you down somehow by going back to someone who never deserved it. I felt something move through my chest that I didn't know what to do with. So you hid it. He met my eyes. I kept it separate. I told myself it didn't touch us. That it was mine to carry, and not yours to worry about. Those are different things, I said. I know that now. I looked at my coffee mug. I looked at the window over the sink, at the gray February light coming through it. Is he bad? I asked. His condition. Some days are worse. He doesn't know me most of the time. Last time I went, he thought I was someone who used to work at his old shop. He spent 40 minutes telling me about a carburetor he rebuilt in 1987. I didn't say anything. Marcus kept his eyes on me. I should have told you, Claire. That's all there is to it. Not because you would have fixed it, not because it had to be your problem. Because you're my wife. And keeping something that big separate from you was wrong. It made me dishonest in a marriage where I promised I wouldn't be. I sat there for a long time. There is a particular kind of hurt that does not come from betrayal. It comes from relief that it wasn't betrayal and grief that you ever had to wonder. From finding out someone you love has been carrying something heavy all alone for years because they were afraid of your judgment. That kind you have to sit with. I'm not angry, I said finally. He looked up. I'm not angry, I said again, because I wanted to make sure I meant it before I kept going. I'm sad. And I wish you had trusted me with it. And I don't know what to do about that yet. He nodded. He didn't push for more than that. That afternoon, I drove to the feed store and back without the radio on. Just road noise and my own thoughts. I kept thinking about Marcus at some facility 2 towns over, sitting across from a man who called him the wrong name, paying for a window seat, doing the quiet decent thing for someone who had not done the decent thing for him. Doing it alone, without telling anyone, without asking for credit or comfort or even acknowledgement. That was him too. That was also Marcus. The man who showed up without being asked. Who fixed what needed fixing without making a show of it. Who loved people badly sometimes, meaning he loved them in the wrong direction or the wrong shape, or without explaining himself clearly, but he loved them real. I thought about what it cost him to tell me. I thought about the way his face looked when the words came out. Not relieved exactly. Still afraid. Still waiting for my judgment. I thought about what I had said the night I learned his history. That's not something you come back from. Meaning his father leaving. Meaning the abandonment. I had meant it as understanding, as solidarity. He had heard it as a line I had drawn. And then, quietly and without telling me, he had stepped over that line every few weeks for 3 years. That evening, I waited until after dinner. He was at the sink with his back to me, washing the last of the dishes. I walked over and stood beside him. I want to go with you, I said. Next time you go out there. He turned the water off. He turned around and looked at me. Not like he hadn't heard me. Like he was checking whether I meant it. I mean it, I said. He was quiet for a second. Then he said he won't know you. I know. He won't know me either, probably. Or he'll know me wrong. I know that too. Something in his face shifted. Not breaking, nothing that dramatic. Just the same thing I had seen in that chair weeks ago when I had been trying to find something wrong in him. He wasn't hiding guilt. He had been hiding grief. There is a difference, and it matters. Okay, he said. We went the following Saturday. Hadley was 40 minutes in flat winter light, mostly county road, the kind of drive that empties you out a little. Marcus drove, and I watched the fields go by. He didn't talk much, and I didn't push him. But somewhere around the 20-minute mark, he started. Not explaining, just saying. Small things. The man's name was Gerald. He had worked as a mechanic for most of his life. He had a sense of humor on his good days, dark and dry. The kind Marcus had too. He had a scar on his right hand from an engine he pulled without gloves once. He liked baseball. I listened to all of it. The facility was clean and smelled like industrial soap and something warm underneath it. Rose was at the front desk, shorter than I had pictured, with reading glasses pushed up on her head. She looked at Marcus the way people look at someone who shows up reliably, without surprise, with plain warmth. "Who's this?" she asked. "My wife," Marcus said. Rose smiled at me, then at him. "About time," she said. Gerald was in the common room near a window. He was smaller than I expected and thinner. He had Marcus's same wide hands, though, the same way of holding himself when he sat, just slightly forward, like he was about to stand up and do something. He looked up when we came in. His eyes went to Marcus and then to me, and then back. "You came," he said. To Marcus. And then, in a different voice, "Who's she?" "My wife," Marcus said again.
"Claire."
Gerald looked at me for a second with that loose, uncertain study that comes when the brain is searching through fog. Then he said, "Well, she's prettier than that jacket you've got on." Marcus laughed once, quiet. I felt it in the air beside me. We sat with him for about an hour. He moved in and out of clarity the way the light was moving in and out from behind clouds outside his window. Twice he thought Marcus was someone else. Once he went quiet for so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then he surfaced again and looked at his own hands on the armrests like he was checking they were still his. At one point he looked at Marcus directly and said, "You didn't have to keep coming." Marcus said, "I know." Gerald nodded slowly, like he was filing that away somewhere. On the drive back, Marcus didn't say anything for a long time. I watched the field again. Eventually I said, "He knew you." Marcus kept his eyes on the road. "Some days he does. That matters." He was quiet. "I think you made the right call going back," I said. "Even when it was hard. Even when it made no sense to anyone who might have known." He glanced at me. "I'm not saying you were right to keep it from me," I said. "You weren't. We're going to have to talk about that more than once probably. But the going back part, that part was right." He looked at the road. He put his hand over mine on the console between us. That was it for a while. Just his hand and the road, and the fields going pale and flat on both sides of us in the February light. There is something particular about learning who your husband is, through something he tried to hide from you. Not because the secret was shameful, but because the hiding showed you the exact shape of his fear. Where he was most afraid to be judged. What he thought you would not forgive. And when it turns out to be something like this, not another person, not a lie built for self-interest, but a man driving alone to a county facility to sit beside the father who left him 30 years ago, paying for a window seat out of his own pocket, coming home and hanging his jacket on the hook and asking about your mother's appointment, that changes the view of everything. Not because it cancels the hurt of being kept out. That was real. I had spent 3 days thinking the worst, and 3 days of that kind of thinking leaves a mark. But it also shows you something about the man you married, about where he puts his effort when no one is watching, about what he believes you do for people even when they didn't earn it. I found out later, from Rose, that Marcus had gone 22 times in 3 years. 22 Saturdays out of the county and back, most of them unremarkable, a few of them hard. Once Gerald had been confused and frightened, and Marcus had sat with him for 3 hours waiting for it to pass. Once Marcus had come in and Gerald had been clear and lucid and had looked at his son and said, "I'm sorry," twice, plainly, and then drifted back again before Marcus could decide what to do with it. Rose told me he never missed a month. Not during calving. Not when his own truck was in the shop and he had to borrow a neighbor's car. Not during the bad winter 2 years before when the roads were a mess and he drove out anyway, and the visit lasted 20 minutes because the roads got worse while he was there. 22 times. Alone. I sat with that for a long time. We had more than one hard conversation after that. That is the honest part. The part some people want to skip over, but it was real. I needed him to understand that keeping me outside something that large wasn't protecting me. It was just keeping him alone inside it. And alone inside something like that has its own cost, even when you tell yourself you're fine, even when you're good at showing up anyway. He heard that. Not all at once. But he heard it. And I needed to understand that his fear of my judgment had been formed out of real information. I had said things early on that he had memorized differently than I meant them. And I had never gone back to check what meaning he'd kept. That was on me too. We talked about Gerald more after that. little pieces here and there. The carburetor story from 1987 that Marcus had now heard probably 4 times. The way Gerald's face changed when a baseball game came on the common room television, like something in him remembered what to feel. The scar on the right hand that Marcus had asked about once on a clear day, and Gerald had told him the full story of, and Marcus had held onto it because he didn't know how many more clear days there would be. I started going most months. Not every time. This was Marcus's thing and I understood that, but enough that Rose learned my name too, and Gerald stopped looking at me like a stranger. He started calling me by the name of someone he used to know, a woman from his past I never fully identified, but he said the name warmly, with something fond in it. That was enough. Spring came. The heifer calved early, like Marcus had said she would. The fence along the east pasture needed a whole new run of posts after the ground thawed. We had a good hay year and a hard August, and 1 week in September where the well pump quit and the whole farm was held together by borrowed time and whatever Marcus could jury-rig out of the parts he had on hand. Normal things. Working things. The kind of life that fills up fast and doesn't leave a lot of room for the old fear. But I still thought about the envelope in the jacket pocket sometimes. The way I had stood on the cold linoleum in my socks holding a gas station receipt and made up a whole story in my head about the man I had married. I thought about how close I had come to letting that story harden before I gave him the room to tell me the real one. And I thought about what Donna said when I called her after everything came out. I told her the whole thing, what the secret actually was, what Marcus had been doing, all of it. She was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "Well, that's not the story I was expecting."
"No," I said.
"Me neither." She let out a breath. "You're going to be okay." I know. I did know. That was the thing. Not because everything was perfect or because the hard conversations were over or because the fear of being kept outside my own marriage had gone completely, but because I had looked at my husband across that kitchen table, and he had told me the truth when the truth was hard. And that was what I had asked of him from the beginning, even if it took us 4 years and a folded gas station receipt to get there clearly enough to say it out loud. Some people spend their whole lives married to the idea of someone. The clean version. The version that never gets complicated or scared or quietly wrong in a way they have to answer for. I don't want that version. I want the one who sits with his father for 3 hours while the man is frightened and confused and drives home alone and hangs his jacket on the hook by the back door and asks how your day was. I want the one who is afraid of my judgment and shows up anyway. Gerald passed the following April. A Thursday morning, Rose called just after 7. Marcus was already out with the cattle when I took the call. I walked out to the barn and told him at the gate. He stood with the feed bucket in his hand and said nothing for a moment. Just looked at the field. Then he handed me the bucket and I held it while he put both hands on the top rail of the gate and looked at nothing for a while longer. We didn't say much that day. We didn't need to. Some things you carry together without making a speech about it. You just both show up for the ordinary parts of the day, and that is the carrying. At the kitchen table that night, he found me looking at a photo Rose had sent once to my phone. Gerald at his window, facing outside, hands on the armrests. It was not a happy photo or a sad one. Just a man at a window in the late afternoon light. Marcus looked at it for a long time. Then he said, he had a decent last year. Decent enough. I thought about the window seat. The birthday card. 22 Saturdays. Better than decent, I said. He looked at me. I meant what I said. I meant it plain. He reached across the table and took my hand and didn't let go for a while. Outside, the farm was settling into dark the way it did every evening. The fields going quiet, the barn lights on, the same fence lines and tree lines and sky we had looked at for 4 years. Everything ordinary, and everything ours. I had married a quiet man, and he had been hiding something. Not what I feared, not what would have broken us. Something harder than that, and better than that, and more complicated than I had known how to ask about early enough. But we were asking now, and we were answering, and that was the start of the real thing.